Congratulations, you finally asked the person of your dreams to be your partner for life. Take some time to celebrate and just enjoy the moment because this is something that only happens once, hopefully, in a lifetime. But once you've gone ahead and done that, now it's time to start thinking about the wedding itself. How's it going, everyone? If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Tyler Warlow and I go by the Mengineer. I make videos on how to improve your life through your confidence, capabilities, and overall happiness. In today's video, I wanted to talk about how my fiance and I planned and saved for our own wedding. And at the end of the video, I wanted to include a few options for anyone who might be looking for ways to reduce the cost of their own wedding. Weddings are one of the biggest moments in a lot of people's lives, and because of that, you really need to give it the attention that it deserves, especially when it comes to planning things like your finances. There tend to be a lot of little costs when it comes to wedding planning that people don't think about, so it's good to make sure that you know where your finances stand. If that sounds good to you, let's go ahead and jump into the video. The first thing that you guys need to do as a couple is sit down and set a budget for your wedding. You really need to sit down and have an honest conversation about what you are and are not willing to pay for this wedding. This is going to help guide any future decisions when it comes to things that you might be willing to pay for. I personally also recommend factoring the budget for your honeymoon into this. This may involve a few uncomfortable discussions about finances, as a lot of people grew up in differing financial situations and have different ideas as to what it looks like to spend money. So you need to have some real and honest conversations. For example, traditionally, it is considered custom for the parents to help pay for some aspect of the wedding. You as a couple need to discuss if that's even an option that you really want to pursue, or if you'd rather just pay for the wedding yourself, or maybe not even pay for a wedding at all and just elope. Everyone's personal circumstances are a little bit different, and you guys need to take that into account. Another thing that you should take into consideration while planning this aspect of your wedding is the timeline. This is going to dictate just how aggressively you might need to save money for your wedding. So I mentioned that I wanted to detail how my fiance and I personally saved for our wedding. So I was going to go ahead and cover a quick example right now. When we first started planning our wedding, we had set an initial budget of $20,000. That was then later raised to $25,000 when we realized that there were other things that we wanted to have in our wedding, which I will discuss later on. Our families were kind enough that they are willing to cover $10,000 of that. So that meant that we would need to cover $15,000 of the wedding in our own money. We got engaged in May of 2022 and decided that we wanted to get married in the fall of 2024 to give ourselves more time to save for the wedding without having the stress behind it. This left us 29 months or just under 2.5 years to save up that $15K. This meant that we would have to save about $520 a month in order to meet our wedding budget. We were luckily able to do this fairly comfortably given both of our salaries. So once you figured out what your budget is and the timeline for your wedding, you're gonna want to discuss with each other what your non-negotiables are. Again, this is going to involve some honest conversations. What do you really want at your wedding? Determine what you definitely need to have and things that you're willing to cut back on. This is going to involve conversations around things like guests as well as the other things in the wedding such as food, alcohol, clothing, flowers, photography, etc. For example, my fiance and I both knew that we wanted to both have photography and videography done at our wedding. This is definitely more expensive than getting one or the other, so we knew that we would have to potentially cut back in other areas. We also knew that we wanted to try and find a venue that was all inclusive, as this would help reduce the stress of the wedding planning and make our night of the wedding much more enjoyable, as we aren't having to worry about lining out all the details. These were part of the decisions that I mentioned earlier that ended up raising the overall budget for our wedding, but there were also smaller costs that I will detail later. It's important to truly determine what's important to you at your wedding because you might need to decide on other areas where you can cut costs. For instance, I know other people that really didn't care about having a caterer at their wedding, instead opting to have a potluck buffet style dinner where people brought food to the wedding and everyone just had a good time. You want to make this a night that you're going to love and that you'll never forget that, and you do that by having your non-negotiables. And speaking of things that you love, if you've liked this video so far or found it to be helpful, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us to grow and reach new people. Thank you so much, and now let's continue on with the video. The next thing that I want to talk about is that you need to be aware of the several hidden costs when it comes to planning a wedding. Hidden costs are simply things that you might not initially think about when it first comes to wedding planning. Here are some common things that people will typically forget to factor into their budget making when it comes to planning for their wedding. First off, you've got the rehearsal dinner, you've got gifts for the wedding party, you've also got whatever the cost is for any invites, save the dates, or paper placeholders. And of course, there's got to be postage to come along with those things. A lot of people don't realize that the marriage license itself costs a fee, and then there's just the cost of transportation and lodging for the wedding couple the night of the wedding. I personally recommend that you just do a quick Google search on the hidden costs of a wedding, as this is going to give a much more comprehensive list than I can really cover here in this video. And you can pick and choose what will apply to you. Luckily, in my fiance and I's case, a lot of these hidden costs were avoided by getting the all-inclusive venue, because we didn't have to worry about all these different odds and ends. But what about y'all? Are you guys currently planning for a wedding? I would love to hear from y'all in the comments below. When are you aiming to get married, and what kind of theme are you going for your wedding? I love to read all the comments and respond to as many as I possibly can. But the next thing that I'm going to talk about when it comes to planning for your wedding financially is that you need to track what you're spending. I know this seems straightforward, but it's a lot easier to go over your budget than you think, and by tracking your spending, you're gonna make sure that you're staying within that budget. My fiance and I personally use a budget maker through a wedding website because it allows us to break down costs into individual categories that are specific to weddings, rather than us having to build out our own whole spreadsheet. It's incredibly helpful because we can see the budget that we set for each item, and then we can see how much we actually paid for it. And then overall, it will tell us how much we have remaining in our total budget. It's important to do this because it's gonna help keep you grounded and help you make sure that you're not overspending. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the wedding night is a night that you should be willing to spend a little bit more than maybe you budgeted for, because you wanna make it a night to remember, but you don't wanna be going and doubling the wedding budget. No one wants that. But given what I just said of maybe be willing to spend a little bit more than your initial budget, comes my final point. And that's gonna be just have fun with the planning. This is your wedding. And again, like I said earlier, this is hopefully only something that you do once in your lifetime. If you find that you're gonna go over your wedding budget a little bit, but it's going to be on something that you truly love and is going to add joy to this amazing night, I personally say that you should go for it. Let it be a fun and memorable experience for you and your partner. Be aware of your overall budget, but don't be so uptight and strict about it that it ends up causing stress and fights between you and your significant other. That's not the whole point of this. The point of the wedding is to bring two people together in a really happy marriage. So what's the point of starting off on a stressful and really upset foot? So take it easy, take it one step at a time, and get excited for this really big day. So I promised at the end of the video that I would quickly detail some potential options for people who are looking to reduce the overall costs of their wedding. So I'm gonna go ahead and list those off real quick. First off, look at where you're potentially willing to skip on vendors. Like I said, you could potentially skip on a caterer and have more of a home style cooking dinner where friends and family bring dinner. Next, one of the biggest costs is going to be having an open bar. So you can save a lot of money by not having an open bar. There's several different ways that you can work around this. You could just have a dry wedding, but you could also do drink tickets. There are tons of options out there, and I recommend doing a quick Google search if this is something that interests you. Next, if you're a crafty DIY type of person, you could hand make a lot of the decorations for things like your tables and just the general atmosphere of the wedding. Trust me, a lot of people pay a lot of money for those decorations, but you honestly can save a pretty good amount of money just making them yourselves. That's what my parents did for their wedding, and it was beautiful. Next, you can send out online copies of things like invitations, save the dates, and your wedding website. This is going to save you a lot of money, first off on the printing aspect and getting those delivered to you, but also on the postage aspect, since you won't be having to pay for stamps. And finally, while a lot of people may not want to consider this, you could rent a dress or a tux. Honestly, a lot of people end up not wearing their wedding suit or their wedding dress more than once in their life. So sometimes it's good to have an alternate plan. I think this is a little bit of a drastic option, but it is an option for reducing the cost of your wedding. But all right, guys, that brings us to the end of the video. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. But if you enjoyed the video or found it to be helpful at all, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. As I said earlier, it helps us to grow and reach new people. If you have any thoughts, ideas, or opinions on the video, please let me know with a comment down below. I like to read each and every one of them. If you're interested in more videos where I talk about financial topics, be sure to check out this video right here where I talk about whether or not you should buy a used or new car in 2024. If you're interested in more of my most recent stuff, be sure to check out this video right here. But until the next time, this is the Mengineer, signing off.